This is the Todd Shapiro Show on Canada Talks, SiriusXM 167.
Hi, Lance. Lance Lambert, BovedaInc.com. Is that you?
It is, man. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm trying to remain focused. I flew in from Bahamas like 20 minutes ago, so it's tough.
I was going to say that. Are we doing a little role reversal? You got the first jump off of this continent before me this year. What's going on, buddy?
Yeah, but you're traveling too much. I'm taking over. Yeah, what are you doing home? No more trade shows?
Oh my gosh, no, quite the opposite. I've shifted responsibilities. The new official title is Director of Business Development. So as it might sound, I do have a bit more time in the office, but my focus is even more so overseeing trade shows and events and strategic relationships and partnerships and certain programs and such. So my travel will be somewhat less. Definitely will not be doing as many shows. We've got the team in place for that. But still some strategic ones, coming up there for Lyft to come visit you and hang out. And, of course, Spanibus coming up over in Barcelona and, a couple other trips like that. They're a little more strategic. I'll still be a part of.
Oh, good, man. Good. And, man, cannabis. Everyone's still talking cannabis. Lots and lots of cannabis news. Denmark to look at decriminalizing drugs.
Yeah, this is an interesting one, right? So to some people, they might be like, what? So there's actually a country that's possibly going to decriminalize all drugs? This is something, and I think we've briefly discussed this on the show before, this is something that Portugal did all the way back in 2001. And with decriminalization, we don't want to confuse that with descheduling or legalizing. It's not quite that far, but what it's saying is that it needs to stop being a level of focus from that criminal level and that there's potential felonies or misdemeanors or any long-term repercussions for possession. And this one specifically for Denmark, this is in light of the World Health Organization, or the WHO, as they're called, their call for decriminalization of drugs. And this is something that the Danish politicians are going to take up in autumn. So it'll be interesting to hear. Obviously, they have several months for some preliminary conversations. But the ideology behind this from WHO is that, to focus on this international HIV prevention. It's something that the UN agency encourages countries to stop criminalizing the use of drugs, which I think to a certain level makes sense. Again, it gets into some details of, what is personal consumption, most like reflecting on Portugal again, it's not possessing any substance that has more than a total of 10 days use. So, for them, that might be a half ounce of cannabis is a good example. So I thought that was some interesting news, though, because Denmark is just one of many countries that could help move things forward a little bit quicker towards legalization in Europe.
Very interesting to hear. Let's go to the phones real quick, Lance Lambert from BovedaInc.com. We have John from Michigan who wants to comment. Hi, John.
Hey, Todd. Welcome back. Hey, Lance, congratulations on the promotion.
Thank you. Thank you, John.
Yep, absolutely. Kind of off topic a little bit. This happened shortly before the holiday break, Todd and Lance. There was a study published, state of Michigan, and it was so off the wall with regard to marijuana usage, and they wouldn't even give a specific percentage, but basically they're calling it like marijuana usage syndrome, that, it was enough of a tenth of a percent where people who are now regularly using marijuana because it's been decriminalized and legalized up here, they start showing up late for work and are starting to be less responsible in their daily activities. And I just about laughed my butt off when I heard this thing. And, of course, they won't quote any statistics, but I'm sure, Lance, you probably have more access to looking this up. I have not gone and looked it up because I just thought it was so ridiculous. But somebody, obviously, that did this study for the state of Michigan has an agenda that's saying all this. Mm-hmm. And I'm sure that the effects of it are so much less than, compared to like opioid addiction or other addictions. But I wanted to throw that out there. I don't know if you'd seen the study yet or heard of it, But like I said, they wouldn't even give a percentage, and I know it's in the tenths of a percent of what the study came out.
Yeah, that's something that I'd heard very little about, I think because of the lack of traction due to your point, the lack of evidence, John. So it was something I remember hearing a little bit about, is some supposedly a scholastic study that had been done, one I think even associated with adolescence and reference back to like the 80s, which again, that gets a little scary because that's back during the Daryl Gates Dare era where a lot of erroneous information came out. The one thing I do know is, to your point, John, if they do actually study it apple to apple, and even if it's apple to pineapple, to your point, what is that in comparison to excessive alcohol usage, excessive use of opioids, or maybe even sleep, your ambience and your halcyons. So it is quite interesting,
Sure.
Where did they get this information and how subjective was it versus an objective perspective, all-encompassing? Because, quite honest, people that use it, that's why people that need to be alert, awake, and focused, they microdose certain sativa-dominant strains because it does make them more alert. And there's studies tied to people and the effects of Alzheimer's and PTSD that are legitimate studies from legitimate colleges. So to your point, I'm sure that was left out of this study, the people that have actually looked at it from the flip side of what attributes versus what ailments come out of, maybe chronic or habitual usage.
Sure, and what really actually bothered me is that it gained traction on Michigan Public Radio, and I thought, hopefully, I'm going to only hear this one day, and then I heard like the same story repeated over a period of 3 days, and I'm going, this is such garbage, and to not even publish or not even give your public 0.1%, whatever percentage it was, they wouldn't even say it. And they said, well, but it was enough to be significant. Anything to me under 1% is not enough to be significant.
Oh, correct. And I'm right there with you. And this isn't the only thing. We're seeing it even, believe it or not, John, at the national level over in D.C. on the Hill. I just heard back, being a member of Attach, we have our board meetings, our conversations. And there is a study associated with potential for psychosis in children with cannabis usage. Again, the first thing I thought of, just like you, is, okay, wait a minute, what are the reactions or side effects that exist with children that are exposed to, again, hardcore pharmaceuticals or alcohol or nicotine? I mean, to just alienate out what the reactions are to cannabis versus other controlled substances. And then don't even get me started on the fact that there's no child-resistant cap on a bottle of vodka, but there is on all legal cannabis products, which, again, kind of begs to question, So,
and even drugs that we give our children already have, if you see a drug ad in a magazine, there's the one-page drug ad, and then you have the 2 pages of disclaimers of possible side effects and what they can do. So if your kid's using cannabis to treat his cancer or whatever, or his ADD, so he might sleep better and eat a little more.
Hey, John from Michigan, should we change the name of the show, you think, today to the John from Michigan Show, or what's going on?
Oh, I'm sorry, John. I know, we kind of went on.
No, dude, that was a good conversation. I honestly, it was nice to sit back and go, man, anyone can really be a radio show host, couldn't they? But no, thanks, John. I'm only rushing and expediting this because I got a couple of neat little points to get through with Lance before his time here from BovedaInc.com.
Yep, absolutely, man. It's your show, Todd, and I just know you were tired and needed a break.
No, I think it was pretty good. All that child talk. I was thinking, like it's just like a child's job here. Clearly, I need more cannabis in my life. So thank you, dude. Thank you very much, John from Michigan.
Great show.
All right, Lance Lambert's here. I wanted to say, for those of you suffering some crazy gonorrhea infection or something, maybe you got some terrible gonorrhea going, and you're going, uh-oh, it's a superbug antibiotic-resistant gonorrhea, and it's really itching me and hurting. Well, you know what can help maybe? CBGs can help fight antibiotic-resistant superbugs, the study found. Lance Lambert, if there's any expert on superbugs, it would have been John from Michigan. Maybe we should have kept him on the phone. Tell us that. That's really interesting.
Yeah, man. We spoke, it was around the holidays when we talked about this, Todd. about CBG. And CBG is just another cannabinoid, from cannabis. It's one that we've mostly recognized as being associated with anti-inflammatory. So think of it almost as like the nature's solution to ibuprofen, if you will, or alternative, I should say. So CBG, they actually found, and it was in this study, it was actually Canadian researchers that uncovered this. And they discovered that this kind of relatively unknown cannabis compound can help kill antibiotic-resistant superbugs. So again, heaven forbid we turn to Mother Nature for solutions, right? Because in my opinion, and that's just my personal opinion, the Mother Nature really does have a lot of the answers to our ailments and our issues. And it was these researchers from McMaster University, which is over in Hamilton, not too far from me in Ontario, recently conducted this study, and they just explored the antibiotic properties of 5 different cannabinoids. And during the lab test, the research team discovered that cannabidiol, or CBG, was able to kill methicillin-resistant Staphylococcus aureus, or MRSA, drug-resistant form of bacteria, and that's responsible for a growing number of life-threatening infections. So anything that can combat MSRA is a huge win for the populace at large. So I thought that was quite an interesting thing. They can be found in the ACS Infectious Diseases Journal, which is pretty cool as well.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I mean, I joked about gonorrhea and stuff, but it is one of those things that I've been hearing, Lance, for a long time, that if you get this superbug, like, this could be pretty severe right now. You got to, you make sure you wrap it up. But cannabis users, my goodness, are they gonna be extraordinarily pleased to find out that there might be some other options from a plant that they love, and to help them with another thing that they love. Do you ever, I was never big into. I'm just gonna be honest now. I'll change the topic here, Lance. Feel free to comment if you want or not. I was never big into getting high and doing the sex.
Mm-hmm.
It made it too. Some people love it and swear by it, and for me, it made it too comical at times.
Oh wow! It is. Everybody's endocannabinoid systems are unique. What works for you is unique. One thing that is common for a lot of consumers, and myself included, because of course I'm medicinal first, but don't ignore the attributes that come from it in consumption. But it really enhances the senses. And what's funny is, I think we discussed this before, Hollywood always plays on the stereotypes, like the Spicoli, sitting around eating pizza, being lazy, laying back. It's actually quite opposite. It really reclocks the brain. I don't know how else to put it. This is just my terminology, but it really reclocks so that you're able to process even more. So it slows things down, so things look better, feel better, smell better, taste better. So oftentimes that's why they do joke around about the munchies, because that's just one way of those elements being able to be, experienced with our sensory system, for us to be able to take advantage of that enhanced sensory, and things do generally, for most people, taste better or feel better. But it's not for everyone, to your point. I know people also that, again, it's a little too discombobulating for them. They're a little too disconnected when they consume cannabis. They don't like the spacey, detached feeling. They feel like they don't have as much control over it compared to other things like alcohol. So it isn't for everyone, but I think some people definitely enjoy that side effect.
No, yeah, I can see that for sure. And on the CBD side of things, I know after doing intensive studies about this stuff and almost bringing a product to market, how the CBD in lubricants and things really help with relaxation, relieving anxiety, all that. You can't make true claims on that stuff now, but really interesting how all this stuff, you can use the CBD to get it on, and then you can use the CBG to help cure what you got from getting it on.
The miracle plant. It's the miracle plant.
Hey, Bilal, that's a great clip. You got to save that right there. Okay. Lance Lambert, BovedaInc.com. Here we go. Here's a segue for you, Lance, to end the segment today. From getting laid to getting lays. Hawaii's decriminalization of marijuana now is in effect. You like what I did there?
I do. I love what you did, and I thought of you coming back from the Bahamas. I thought we got to do some sort of island story here, right? So thought we'd cover this, so Hawaii technically is the 26th state to decriminalize cannabis. So even if there is, policy on the drug and one of the most conservative ones in the country, still, I thought this was a huge leap for Hawaii. And essentially all it does is, again, decriminalization doesn't mean full-blown legalization. They still have a medical program in place. And unfortunately, they are a reciprocity state, but you have to go through this due process before visiting for them to recognize that. But having said that, on January 11th of this year, so we're literally just talking a week ago, this law essentially will prevent the incarceration of people over the possession of cannabis, and that's huge. So,
that's great. That's great news. Not only is it huge, Lance, it's amazing we're still talking about this stuff. I can't believe it. There's pardons still? Really? How about pardon me? What the F for government's thinking? This is ridiculous. How many times have we got to say this by now? Oh, drives me nuts. But that's good news. At least there's forward progress. Yep.
Yeah, and it is. So it's what I call. I had someone in law enforcement laugh at me when I called this, but they switched to a catch and release program, right? So if you have 3 grams or less of cannabis on your persons, essentially you're now going to face a $130 fine. I mean, that's it. So literally, they give you a fine, you walk off, you're done. I mean, it shouldn't even be that, because to your point, it's just a plant. It literally is just a plant, people. I do feel it should be controlled. It is still a substance, but come on. These aren't people, again, slinging meth or PCP or MDMA or coke out there. I mean, these are people that have a small percentage of this plant for personal consumption. So it should be treated as such.
Good stuff, Lance. And everything's going well in the Boveda Inc. com. Where you got? What's a new country you guys maybe got into that we wouldn't know?
My gosh, really things are finally moving forward in Australia. We've been there, but with the essential decriminalization of personal usage, possession, and growing in ATC, which is Australia's capital territory, ACT, they actually have started moving forward, just trying to figure out some of the legalities there. Over in Europe, continue to move forward over there. We have a really nice setup there now with the 3PL, which is essentially a third-party logistics for distribution. So we're looking at several additional countries to bring on, including Ireland, more exposure and coverage in the UK, and then not just Western Europe like we've been, but shifting over to the Eastern Bloc too. So definitely continue to grow, and been so fortunate. You saw us with our whole Save the Terps program that we kicked off in Las Vegas while you were out. And that program's been extremely successful, too. We've done a Boveda challenge around it, and we've had dozens and dozens of folks that have taken the challenge. I had some friends, actually, Dude Grows out in Colorado. They're doing a challenge with 10 pounds of excessively dry Denver weed just to see how Boveda can protect and bring that life back to that biomass. So it's been good stuff coming into 2020 for certain.
Oh, man, good to hear. Very nice to hear. Well, Lance, I love catching up with you. And I guess we won't see each other for quite some time. Do you go to Canatech in Israel, by the way?
I've gone to that. That is a phenomenal show. It's definitely just like Mardi Gras out in Nimbin. It's at least once you got to get out there if you're in the industry. Again, Israel is the epicenter for both technology and medical studies. They have the University of Cannabis and Cancer out there. My gosh, those guys, what they are doing, being a cancer survivor, that would be the first group that I would call if I ever had another issue. So, yeah, I have been out there. Our next stop, I'll be out at TPE, which this is kind of interesting because this is the Tobacco Plus Expo that's going on the end of this month in Las Vegas. And I'm really stoked to share I'll be moderating the first ever cannabis panel at that event because there's so many people in the tobacco industry that recognize that their consumers are shifting over to something healthier.
Wow.
And that is everything from CBD hemp cigarettes to obviously full-blown cannabis. So that's the next stop will be. But do look forward to getting up there to Toronto again for Lyft. Going to come up, spend some extra time so you and I can hang out. And I love getting in the studio. It's always good times. So
good stuff.
Looking forward to that.
Excellent, Lance. Well, look forward to updating you on a bunch of things. Thanks for the live updates here on the show. Have yourself a great day, and always bringing you the cannabis news all over the world from bovedainc.com, BOVEDAINC, bovedainc.com. Keeping your cannabis fresh And Lance Lambert's the man who's just a good friend. Thank you, Lance. Cheers.
Hey, thanks. I appreciate it, buddy.
Cool.
This is the Todd Shapiro Show on Canada Talks, SiriusXM 167.